All right, let's talk about something that could completely change how we stay cool. Get this. It's a new kind of paint coming out of Singapore that lets a building literally sweat. So how on earth does that work? Let's find out.
I know, it sounds a little weird, right? But that's the big idea here. This new paint copies one of nature's best cooling systems. By sweating, it gives us a way to cool down our homes and even our cities without having to crank up those energy-hungry air conditioners.
So to really get why this is such a game changer, we first have to understand just how big of a problem we're dealing with. The cost of keeping things cool is just massive. And I'm not just talking about money, I'm talking about the cost to the planet.
Just wrap your head around this number for a second. 60%. Globally, a whopping 60% of all the energy we use in buildings goes to space cooling. That is a huge amount of power that we're just pouring into keeping ourselves comfortable.
And you know where this problem gets even worse? Our cities. All that concrete and asphalt, it just soaks up and traps heat. It's something called the urban heat island effect. And the real kicker is that the AC units we use to cool our apartments are pumping hot air right back outside, making the city itself even hotter. It's a total vicious cycle.
So what are the options if we don't want to use electricity? Well, the most common technology we have right now has a pretty major flaw, especially in the very places that are the hottest and need the most help.
It's called radiative cooling. The idea is pretty simple, actually. You use special paints that reflect sunlight, and then they radiate or release any heat they've absorbed back out into the atmosphere. You can think of it like a mirror for the sun's heat. But, and this is a big but, there's a catch.
And here is where it all falls apart. In dry air, it works great. The heat just radiates away. But in humid places like Singapore or the Middle East, the water vapor in the air acts like a blanket, trapping all that heat close to the ground. So the paint just doesn't work. It can't cool things down where we need it the most.
This is where the team at Nanyang Technological University had their big breakthrough. They thought, okay, instead of trying to fight the humidity, what if we could work with it? And for inspiration, they looked straight to biology.
So they came up with a paint that does this standard cooling thing, but adds evaporative cooling into the mix. You know, the same exact process our bodies use. When we sweat, the moisture evaporates from our skin and cools us down. Well, this paint does the very same thing for an entire building.
And you know, the most amazing part is that this whole thing happens without using a single watt of energy. Like materials scientist Li Hong says, the key is passive cooling. There are no pumps, no fans, no electricity needed at all. The cooling is literally built right into the paint.
So how in the world does a paint sweat? Well, it's not just one thing. It's a really clever mix of 3 different cooling strategies all working together.
Okay, so step 1, it reflects sunlight, just like those other cooling paints. Step 2, it radiates any heat it does absorb back out. But here's the secret sauce. Step 3, it actually holds onto water and lets it evaporate slowly, actively pulling heat away from the surface. It's the power of sweat.
And the numbers are just fantastic. It reflects up to 92% of sunlight and gets rid of 95% of the heat it absorbs. The magic is in its porous structure, which holds the water. A bit of polymer and salt help it hang on to that moisture, and special nanoparticles keep the paint strong and super white, so it can keep on sweating and cooling for a long, long time.
So a great idea in a lab is one thing, but you gotta ask, how does it hold up in the real world? Well, the scientists put it through a really tough 2-year test right in the heat and humidity of Singapore.
The results? They were pretty incredible. They set up 3 little test houses, and the one with the new sweating paint used 30 to 40% less electricity for air conditioning. That's compared to houses with regular paint and even a fancy commercial cooling paint. That's a massive, massive energy saving.
But what about durability? I mean, a lot of these cooling paints turn a dingy yellow after a while, which makes them less reflective. Not this one. As co-author Jipeng Fai said, even after 2 years of getting blasted by sun and rain, their paint was still bright white. That means it was still working just as well as it did on day 1.
So the results for a single building are obviously amazing. But the real potential here, the thing that gets really exciting, is when we zoom out and start thinking about cooling down entire cities. And here's why that's so important. Your air conditioner cools your apartment by pumping hot air out onto the street, which just makes that urban heat island effect worse. This paint, though, it uses 0 energy, and it releases heat in a way that lets it escape way up into the atmosphere so it doesn't warm up the streets below.
So what this all boils down to is a low-energy, really sustainable way to take the edge off the heat in the exact places that are suffering the most, those dense, hot, and humid cities all around the globe.
It's just a powerful idea, isn't it? By taking a page from nature's oldest playbook, we might have found a simple, elegant, and totally passive solution to one of our biggest energy problems, just letting our buildings sweat it out for us.